Here we go. I just want to check my email real quick and see if anybody's trying to get in. Okay, we can go ahead and start. Alrighty, welcome everyone. Our third week. We have this week and then next week. And then the March session will start after a week break. If you want to continue, just drop me a note, email me. We're going to talk today. I did this assignment with some other students this week and last week, and it was really, really fun. And it turns out great, and it's somewhat easy. And I feel like I could give you all a little bit of a break and make things a little easier. And I want to talk about neutrals. I always like to have a class about neutrals because I mix all my neutrals from the primary colors. And it's really fun to do that. And it's also very empowering because you can go to, the art supply store and there are tubes of all these browns and grays that you can buy. And if you use them, they're pretty, they're beautiful, but they're all like, if you get a tube of burnt sienna, for instance, it's going to be the same. You can add water to it and lighten it, or you can add less water, more paint and darken it. You can get a range of values. Hi, Vanessa. But you're not going to get as much of a dynamic color as you would if you mixed your neutrals from scratch or from the primaries. So we're going to talk about that today a little bit. And then I'm going to give you an assignment that we can start in class where we can practice these luminous darks, is what I like to call them. And I will give you, if you need more of a challenge, I'm going to make some suggestions of ways you can challenge yourself in this exercise. So to start, we're going to do some color swatches. You can watch or you can go along with me in your sketchbook or on the back of an old painting. We're going to talk about the color wheel, and we're going to talk about the magic of creating our own dark mixes. And we'll do that for about 20 minutes or so, and then we'll move into a new piece of watercolor paper, and we will start painting rocks. So I'm going to go ahead and pop my tabletop into...
I'm so excited we get to do those rocks. I saw them on your...
Yes, I posted them on my social media. And yeah, who knew rocks could be so much fun? So here's what we're going to work towards. And we're going to use salt. If you have salt, great. If you don't today, that's okay. It's fun to play with salt to create these crystally feathery textures. And I'm going to demo that, and you can do it with me if you have salt. And here's another version. So all these neutrals are created from the primary colors. So that's what we're going to cover first. And then we're going to have fun practicing our neutrals with these rocks. So, dark mixes. And this is where the color wheel comes in handy. This is my study card that I use for teaching, and I've carefully drawn these squares. Don't worry about that. We're going to do more of a page like this. But all these swatches were made by playing with my colors and creating dark mixes. And it's an art and science, and you're going to get better at it the more you practice. But today I want to start by just doing a bunch of swatches, and some of these are not maybe what you would think of as a neutral. And I'm going to talk to you about seeing the colors within your swatch and making adjustments to get the color closer to what you want, whether it's a gray or a brown or a tan. Neutrals are fantastic for so many things. They're found in nature, shells, rocks, trees, animals. Portrait artists master neutrals. They know all the neutrals, the warms, the cools, the reddish neutrals, the bluish neutrals, and they use all these colors in portraiture, and just you can really water some of these down and get realistic skin tones. So the basic recipe for creating a dark, and you'll need your color wheel for this, is to you can start with any red, any yellow, and any blue. I'm going to use my more simplified palette today. I'm going to ignore these colors up here, probably, and use the blues, reds, and yellows that are in this Daniel Smith Essentials set. So basically, I have a warm primary and a cool primary. Doesn't matter what you have, but we're going to focus on simplified mixes using a red, a yellow, and a blue. Having multiple reds, yellows, and blues is even better because it just expands the possibilities. So if you mix red, yellow, and blue, I'm just going to grab the red. This is quinacridone rose and yellow. And then blue is so strong. We don't need a lot of blue. But just for showing you what happens, you know, red, yellow, and blue, you swirl them together. They make mud, right? And different quantities or ratios of the red, yellow, and blue will give different mixes. So in this puddle of red, yellow, and blue, I've got some neutralized color. And I'll show you the only real way to see what it truly looks like is to make a swatch of it. Gosh, it's really dry here. Okay, now this color is beautiful. And I'm seeing the tiniest bit of perhaps purple. And this is where the second part of your color mixing recipe comes into play. Opposites on the color wheel neutralize each other. And violet or purple and yellow are opposites. So if you take a little bit of yellow into that mix, it'll shift it and give you a more neutralized color. The purple has lessened because the yellow neutralized it. So depending on the red, yellow, and blue you've used, you're going to get a color that's neutralized, but it might not be the right color you want. And that's where the game begins. Okay. You go to the opposites on the color wheel to determine how to truly neutralize your color. So my favorite opposites are violet and yellow, blue and orange, and green and red. So let's practice creating some neutrals just slowly and carefully. We're going to just do this. And one of the things you can do if you want to create a nice little study aid of your own is write down the primaries you used. So I used quinacridone rose for my red, and I used Hansa, I think it was Hansa yellow. And I think it was ultramarine blue. I'm gonna double check that by doing it again. Yellow, Quin Rose, ultramarine. Yeah, it was ultramarine. And you're going to get a wide range of colors just using those same three, depending on the amount of water, the ratio of the three colors. And I'm going to skip down. I'm going to try a different combo. I can tell you right now, the Pyrrole Scarlet in this kit creates really, truly muddy colors. I'll show you. Pyrrole Scarlet and New Gamboge. And Phthalo Blue. Pyrrole Scarlet almost looks orange, right? So this is where your opposites on the color wheel needs to be considered. Pyrrole Scarlet, New Gamboge also is not quite yellowy. It's got an orangey tint. And the Phthalo Blue. Okay. Nice mud. What does it look like on the paper? Cool. That's pretty close to black. With more of the red in it, it shifts to the brownish. A lot of possibilities here. More water just gives you a lighter version. What if I put more blue in it? Different altogether. Isn't that crazy? So just that trio there is giving me all these possibilities and more. So you can mix it up and switch it up and do whatever you'd like. And just remember, opposites on the color wheel will also create a neutral. So you don't have to do the yellow, red, and blue mix. You can start with what's on your palette. This is orange. It's left over. I don't even know what colors created this orange, but it's an orange. On your color wheel, orange is opposite blue. So maybe just the tiniest dot of blue. I may have even used too much blue. Yeah, it's got a bluish tint. It's beautiful. It could still be a neutral that works for what your needs are. But if you want it to be less blue, you just add more orange in just the tiniest bit. Don't go too far with it. Paint with it. Now I've got kind of it's a different color and there's a greenish tint. Green is opposite red. Maybe if I put just the tiniest bit of red in here, I will get a different color and it might be more neutral. Meaning less, it's more ambiguous. It doesn't have a strong green, blue, red. It doesn't have a strong primary tint to it. Okay, just that tiny little speck of red neutralize the green. There we go. We've got a nice gray. And all three of these are gorgeous and would be beautiful in the painting. I'm going to give y'all a couple minutes to just make another couple of mixes for fun. And then we'll move into the rocks. And you can continue doing this on your own if you haven't done it before. Take your time with it. There's no need to rush. It's also helpful to know what colors you're mixing with, but if you don't, that's okay too, because you're training your eye to see these colors and instead of saying, oh, I got brown and gray, you're able to see more carefully what the underlying hue is. You know, this has more red or purple perhaps, and this has more, well, this really truly looks like a gray. But you're training your eye to see the parts of a color. And by mixing our neutrals from the primaries, we get a really cool thing. Something really cool can happen, especially with ultramarine blue. The pigment doesn't completely integrate with the pigment you're mixing with. Blue, ultramarine blue will kind of push and pull away from other pigments. So as it dries, there's like a separation of the blue and red on the paper, and it creates a granulation of sorts. Some pigments granulate a lot more than others. Some don't granulate at all. And when we paint our rocks, we're going to learn how that plays out. There's a really cool granulation happening in this one. So ultramarine for sure will do that. Mixing a violet and putting yellow into it. Actually, it's better to put violet into yellow. And then you can also, once you have a plate full of neutrals, you can just skip around and, you know, mix all of your stuff together and see what you end up with. Or not. You can spend a lot of time doing this. Now, some people ask me about like the colored lamp black that you can buy in a tube. And it's a true black. It's pretty black and it's a watercolor. And it's nice to have on hand if you want to use black a lot. I don't have it. What I do have in my palette is this is a smaller compact palette. I don't have as many colors in it, but I do have phthalo green. It's just like phthalo blue. It's PHTHALO, phthalo green. And there are other greens, viridian and Hooker's green. There are some other greens that are pretty green too, but phthalo green is really green. Like if you paint with it on its own, um, it's pretty harsh actually. I don't think I would use it a lot on its own. Maybe in small doses, in some cases. I mean, I don't want to say never. It's okay to use it. However, it's excellent for mixing with other colors. You mix it with yellows, you get these fantastic yellow greens. You mix it with blues, you get unbelievable turquoise colors. And you mix it with red, and remember I said red and green neutralize. You can get a really nice dark. So I don't know which red I grabbed, but this kind of has a reddish tone to it. Maybe I need more green. Still looking green. So let me grab, this is a cool red. This is alizarin crimson. Alizarin crimson. It's like a blood red. Alizarin crimson and phthalo green will make pretty much black. Still not quite getting it. There we go. There we go. So alizarin crimson is a nice red to have. If you have alizarin crimson and green, then your alizarin crimson can create all kinds of oranges and purples. And this can create all kinds of blues and greens that you didn't have before.
Elizabeth?
Okay. take a minute to shift gears and go on to the rocks.
Hey, Elizabeth, is the wind about blowing your studio down over there?
What?
Is the wind blowing your studio down over there? It's very windy over here. It sounds.
Is it? Well, not super windy. It was gusty when I walked over here this morning. Yeah, it's blowing, but not. Yeah, it's gusting a little bit.
Elizabeth,
Yeah,
do you always need to mix 3 colors to do neutrals, or can you just try to do neutrals with 2 colors, for example?
you don't always have to mix three.
Okay.
Absolutely not. Um, two is great.
Okay.
There aren't two primary colors that will create a neutral though.
Mhm. Okay.
So if you have um, purple already mixed, go to the opposite, which is yellow. If you've got orange, go to your blues. Yeah. I like doing it from my opposites, but sometimes I might not have the opposite I need, like yellow. I don't have purple unless I mix it. So,
Thank you.
all right. So y'all can continue building your little color card of neutrals just to have fun and explore the possibilities. And we're gonna talk about the rocks now. So this probably makes more sense. See all these neutrals. I just played with all my colors to paint these rocks. And two different temperatures or two different feels for them. Yeah, this one has this kind of orangey, reddish terracotta rock. They were all created from primaries, the same palette, the same set of paints. Um, Basically the same 6 colors I just demoed with. So let's start a painting, or you can do just practice for now, but we're gonna create a rock painting. That's gonna be our assignment. And set this aside. I'm gonna demo the use of salt to create texture. So on just a small scrap paper, if you wish, or a larger sheet, you can do this along with me. And you're going to start by drawing rocks with a pencil lightly. And they're just ovally shapes. I'll send a picture of my rocks with the recording, or I'll have it out right now. But they're all different. And they're all about, pencil width apart or less. And you just want different sizes. And you want to have some going off the page. small ones. You don't want them all the same size. I'm getting kind of a lot of sameness here, so maybe it's time for a big one. I'm gonna put a bigger one over here. This is a little large. Um, think of a little walkway or a river. Okay, I'm not gonna do the whole page. So I want you to spend time on your drawing outside of class. And it's not, this is so easy to do, as long as you have some going off the page in a variety of sizes, you're going to be fine. If you want to challenge yourself, if you're a more advanced painter and you want to challenge yourself, try incorporating some twigs or something else that you can think of. But the rocks are going to be straightforward and beautiful. Now you're going to have all these rocks on your paper, whether you do a small version or a large version, it's up to you. But you're going to have fun exploring your neutrals. And I would suggest there are going to be several things you can practice with this. First of all, you can just grab a nice rich neutral that you like. And paint a rock using the direct method. Direct method is just nice, juicy paint. Dampening my brush off because this paint is so watery. And I'm switching it up slightly. I picked up a different color to finish the shape. Remember that change the color as you move across the shape. You want to repeat the color elsewhere. Paint is really watery. Yeah, let that sit. So that's wet paint on dry paper. Maybe introduce different colors in the same rock. Because I have puddles of color, I can put them on the paper and they'll run together and create interesting things. Wet paint on dry paper. For these larger shapes and even the smaller ones, you can wet the paper. Wet the paper with water. And drop in color. This is going to be very pale because of all the water. You might want to make a little note so you don't forget the things you're going to be doing on this is using the wet on wet or wow, wet paper. But some rocks are going to be wet on wet. Some are going to be wet on dry. Try to use 2, maybe even 3 different colors in one rock. This is going to be so meditative and fun. Y'all are going to love the results. Okay, maybe it's time to, let me do the direct method over here. You kind of want to keep continuity through your painting by repeating colors throughout. Right now I'm using these things that are on my tray. Maybe you're bored with this and you want to try a different mix. That's fine. I'm gonna mix up, I really like orange and blue. So let me get an orange going. Kind of a weird color. Orange plus tad of blue. Maybe this will be violet and purple. Red and blue. Wow, that's a very, very blue. Need more red. A lot of red. If you get a lot of a dark like this, don't try to put a light color in it. You're going to be fighting an uphill battle. Pull some of the color to the side. The dark over here. It's beautiful. I might use it for some rocks, but it does have a purpley tint, right? So perhaps you'll want to mix it with some yellow. Here we go. So now I've got some new colors to excite me. What I can do is I can use the wow or the wet into wet and see how it looks. And well, ultimately you want to test it out over here. You want to check it out over here if you're new to color mixing, so you don't get any surprises. But I'm going to just wet one of my rocks. My water is pretty dirty, so it's got a nice little neutral here already. Got a lot of water on there too. Okay. Wet the shape and drop in this new color. Put a little purple in there too. A little bit of the purpley mix. And I'll let it dry. And now I feel brave enough to do that mix on a larger rock without wetting the paper. And just go in and put some of that new color down. Bring some purple into it. Ooh, that's really dark. Now rinse my brush so I just have water. Again, wet on wet, wet on dry. Don't fiddle with it once you put the color down. You can go back later when everything's dry and adjust things. This is going to be a multiple step project. Anybody have questions so far? Wet on dry rocks, wet on wet. A variety of color within the rock shape. So I'm going to talk about salt. So using a little bit of salt on the rocks will give them this cool texture. And you can do it on as many rocks as you'd like. And you can use table salt, Morton kosher salt, pickling salt, all different salts will work. They're going to give different results. I think this was some really fancy sea salt. I did this with some fancy sea salt I had for cooking. I think what I have today is Morton kosher salt, and it's a little coarser, but it's still going to work, and regular old table salt will work. So some of your rocks can have salt for texture. And looking at this, I feel like it's kind of boring. It's all the same tones. Maybe I want to introduce some excitement. So I'm going to do a rock with purple. And I'm going to add salt. You have to add the salt while the paint is wet. Wow, I got a really interesting color here. So I want nice, luscious paint on the dry paper. This is very, very dark. This is a crazy rock. And it's because I have so much paint, so much pigment, that it's super strong, stronger than I'd like. So I'm gonna put salt in it. I'm gonna pinch the salt and sprinkle it in here. And then you have to let it sit until it completely dries. So that salt is absorbing a lot of that paint. And it's also absorbing the water, pulling the water and the paint away from the paper. So it's going to add some lightness. Because I have that crazy dark purpley turquoise shape here, I want to put it somewhere else. So this doesn't become this attention grabbing thing. So I'm going to use that same really dark mixture and maybe put it in two other places. So maybe I'll put it over here. This is how you turn something you weren't quite expecting into something that will work for you. I'm just replicating those mixes over in another spot. And I'm going to add salt. And I want to do it over here. I'm going to draw some more shapes. I want to bring that color into another part of the paint. And then for good measure, I'm going to do some wet into wet or wow, wet on wet. A little bit of that dark. No salt this time. You could try salt and see what it does
Okay.
on the real wet stuff. It'll still work.
Elizabeth, what were your colors for the darkest ones that you did? I really like that mix.
A lot of phthalo blue. A lot of phthalo blue and a lot of quinacridone rose.
Okay.
But the phthalo blue, it didn't get as purpley as I wanted. But yeah, I started with phthalo blue and quinacridone rose. And the dark has got a purple tone to it.
Thank you.
And then I think I just pulled in some of my murkier browns. Yeah, each time I paint with it, it looks different. And my paint water is so dirty now that I'm getting a nice neutral, a nice soft neutral color with my paint water. That's pretty on its own. I'll drop a little purpley blue into it. Now, if you get too much water on your paper, dry your brush off like this, like grab it and like really dry it off. I'm gonna put salt on this one. I feel like I need to start adding some more interest to this. So here's, ended up with a black. Each time I do this, I get a totally different feel, temperature, because the colors are so different each time I mix. So we're not gonna, we want to take our time with this. We want to pause as we're going along and see what's working, what's looking good, what do we need. And take your time. Use a swatch paper to test things out first. I'm going right into my painting, but I encourage you all to go slowly and be thoughtful, but not overthink it. And step away so you can see what's going on. What do you need more of? What do you like? So these are very wet into wet and washy. So maybe I want to introduce more of that here. You want your eye to move through the painting. And if you have a rock that's got like too much red or too much orange or something, it's okay. You can repeat that in another place. Like when I added this terracotta, I was like, whoa, that doesn't match anything. But then I put some of it up here, put some of it down here, and it balanced it. This purple is kind of loud, put some down here. I did some more and added salt. So I'm going to keep, I have a lot of rocks. So I'm going to be working on this a while. And this is big. I want to tell you or show you a couple more things you can do. Let me do one more thing before I switch gears. Put another dark down here. Whoa, what red? Do not want red in this, so I gotta correct that by adding a little blue. some salt in here. Okay. So you're gonna take your time doing these rocks. Wet on wet, wet on dry, salt. If you go out of the lines in places, don't worry about it. I mean, you can, because we're gonna go in around all these with a dark background. I am gonna demo that. But the background is the last thing you're gonna do. So you're gonna get your initial rock colors in with your first application of paint. And you're gonna sprinkle some salt on. And then you need to let it dry, like for half a day, few hours. You want it to be completely dry before you brush the salt off. So get all your rocks painted, sprinkle your salt in as you're going along. You're going to set it aside and let it completely dry. This is where I'm going to start. I want you to take notes. So once it's dry, you're going to brush the salt off with your hand. Hold it over the trash can or whatever and just brush it. Take your finger and massage areas of it to really break loose the salt. Because some of it's going to be really stuck in there. I've already brushed this off. You might even have to use your fingernail. There's a tiny bit left here. Removing the salt. Write that down. Okay, then you're going to remove any stray pencil lines with an eraser. Just lightly. No big deal. Anything that's popping out will slip off with an eraser. Now, before you paint the background, we want to check our rocks and see if any of them need adjusting. And I've already adjusted some of these. And I just want to show you, isn't it interesting? I'm telling you, every time I do this, I get a different, these are cool, dark neutrals, and these are warm, bright neutrals. So wild. So remove salt, remove pencil lines, and then adjust any rocks that you want to adjust. And we're going to adjust by glazing and perhaps shading. So I've done some shading and glazing on these. Glazing is just adding another color. We'll go ahead and do it on this one. I glazed over this with gold, golden yellow. And I glazed this one. Here's one that's, these don't really need a whole lot more, but for example, this one's pretty monochromatic. I could go in with a little more dark, just along the top edge. Then rinse my brush off. And soften that So there's more color up at the top. Just shaded it on that top edge a little bit. I did that with this purple one. Stroked in some color. Rinsed the color off my brush. Dried my brush so it's damp and softened that hard edge. Shading. Many of you already know how to do that. And you don't have to shade. You can just leave them flat. Or if you need more practice shading, practice shading. But shading is just adding in a little darker color. But not going all the way across the shape. Rinse the color off your brush. Dry the water off your brush. And soften that edge. It's so subtle, but it really adds some roundness to your rock. And you can glaze over a rock. Now we know if I put yellow over this, it's going to look more orange. Let's see what happens. Here's a yellowish color. I like the pink rock. But I'm going to show you if I put the little bit of muddy yellow over it, really changes it, right? So fine tune your rocks if you wish by glazing, shading. Don't overdo it. And you gotta let it dry again. You gotta make sure, this looks good, you're happy, you're ready to paint the background. And that's what I'm going to spend the rest of class talking about. It's not going to take that long. Do you all have questions at this point?
Can you shade over the salt without affecting it?
Don't paint over the salt until you've removed it. The speckly stuff from the salt will stay there if you paint over it. You might lose, the salt is sucking water and paint away from the paper. So if you have like a really bright white from that happening, painting over it is going to cover some of the white, but the pattern will still be there.
Elizabeth, which salt did you use on that one? The brown rock that you were
This
just
one?
pointing to? No, up above. I'm sorry.
This one? I think I use the same salt, but the paper's different. So I'm not getting these beautiful
Yeah,
white crystally things.
oh, and
This
that's
is
table?
rougher, cold press paper, and this is smooth hot press paper. So I got the texture, but I didn't get the sparkly, bright white, crystally things. And I didn't get as much of a white. It's because this paper is hot press. It's very smooth. It doesn't have the same toothiness. So that's why. So once you're ready to do background, I'm gonna do something here in class. I'm gonna tear this thing in two. Don't do this to yours. I'm gonna demo background possibilities. I am just hooked on rocks. I think I could just do this for a long, long time. What a cute little booklet this would make.
Yeah.
And I like them with white backgrounds too.
That's so cute, and this is so fun.
It's so fun, right? And it's just mixing neutrals and coloring in these shapes. And okay, so I'm gonna do two versions of this, how you would do the background. And you want your rocks to be dry. And I love, you all know I'm a big fan of bold color. I went straight in on these and I used the direct method. I didn't wet the paper. I got a bunch of rich paint and I just painted quickly and carefully on the dry paper to get this strong application of color. And I did use a lot of water at times to get myself moving around. So you're going to want to mix up a dark that you like. Maybe it's not especially dark. Maybe like a vivid turquoise would be pretty, but you're going to want to think about the colors in your rocks and you're going to want to make some swatches of color to decide what you'd like to do for your background. For this one, I'm getting a sense of lightness. So and I've got all this paint here. This really dark purpley mix. I'm gonna add a little water to it and I'm gonna use it to go in on my background. So I've got a size 8. I think a size 10 is just slightly bigger. I'm gonna get my paint ready, get my brush, and I'm gonna load the brush with this color. And I'm gonna bravely go in and I'm gonna paint the background. Yeah, this hot press paper is harder to paint on. But I'm going in and I'm gonna do my background on dry paper and my paint is wet enough where I can quickly move along without a lot of brush strokes showing. I want more blue. I'm gonna quickly add more blue to this. Again, I should have tested this out first, but I'm gonna move along and I'm gonna get this color in. And it's okay if it's changing a little bit as I move across. Yeah, I like the bluer blue better than the purple. Not super crazy about the purpley. I'm gonna just do it and see what happens. Let me go back in here somewhere while it's wet. And see, I'm turning the paper. And coaxing the paint along on this dry paper because I like the strong color. And on the other one I tore, I'm going to show how you would do the background on wet paper. Do a wet on wet background. And I'm gonna use the same color so you can see the difference. So I'm running out of juice, so I'm gonna really load my brush up.
Looking pretty good. Mhm.
I won't do the whole thing because yeah, so when you do this, you want to have plenty of paint mixed up because if you have to stop at any point, you're going to get a line where you stopped. The paint's going to dry without being continued along the paper. Alrighty. I do want to finish it because I'm so close. Yeah, it'd be a shame not to. So here we go.
Looks good. You're working on a bigger piece, Elizabeth, and it does dry out and you get a line in the spot because you can't move fast enough. Is there any way to correct that?
Yeah, and that happened to mine. I can show you.
Oh, it's nice.
It happened on mine here. I got it there and I got it here. And once it dries, you can go back in
Yeah.
and you can either wet it or go in without wetting it and just add some more color. Doesn't have to be the exact same match, but something close. And try to soften it, try to conceal it a little bit. It's like shading, right? So I'm covering this up. And then to avoid getting another line, when this dries, rinse your brush out, dampen it, and then just feather that out a little bit. Can you see? And then let it dry. And it evened it out a little bit. Did you see how I did that?
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah. You might have to go darker.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, and I've got a mark up here where it dried. And you just gotta And some water and it's a little better. Okay. So this is gonna dry. Maybe I want to go over it again. But if you don't want to do that, use your brush to wet. If you don't have the skill and confidence to do what I just did, that's fine. Use the water and wet your white paper and then drop in tiny bits of color. See that? And you'll get a much lighter background, but it'll be easier because the water's going to move it all along for you. And you won't have to worry about getting those dark lines. So the more water you use, the softer the edges will be of your brush stroking, and you won't get those hard lines. I won't do this whole thing. I'm gonna let it dry and then I can work on it some more later. But this is pretty, you know, it's gonna be lighter. Neither is right or wrong, they're just different. Okay.
Elizabeth, about that one that you just put the wow on, after it dries, if you decide you don't like it, then you can go and glaze it with just like that after it's dry. Yeah,
Well,
okay.
after it's dry, you can go over it again.
Okay.
So I don't have water on the paper here. So see how much darker it is. I also can't really stop without creating a I'm gonna get some water and just smooth that out right now before I stop. Trying to get rid of that line. And then when I start painting again, yeah, I couldn't completely get rid of this, but I'll go into it some more later and try to fix it.
Elizabeth,
Yeah.
if it dries and you don't like it, like Michelle said, can you wet it again and put paint on?
Most colors you can, yep. You can wet it again, but you need really good cottony paper for it to hold up to that. So yeah, you can wet it again. I would almost suggest just making sure you've got a puddle of color. Instead of wetting this surface again, make sure that this over here is really wet.
Okay,
Just keep adding water to it so that it's really wet.
thank you.
And then it's like you're painting over it with a very watery coat. And then you're not stirring up the underlying layer as much. So whether the water is over here or it's on your paper, it's going to have a similar result. Yeah, so. There we go. See, now this is drying and it's so pale.
Yeah, it looks good.
So I'm gonna strengthen it a little more. And there might be brush strokes here and there, and that's okay. It's watercolor is not perfect. You do just want to minimize it. There, I'm gonna leave it, let it dry. Okay. All right, let me pop us back on the screen as a group and then okay. Is everyone good for the week ahead?
Yep.
Any other questions?
I think so.
I have a question.
Hmm.
What if you let the paint dry and then you want to paint over it and you put salt on it? Will that work?
I think it will still work, Corey, but I don't know if you're gonna get the whiteness. Try it on a swatch. I don't think it's not gonna work as well. It's gonna do something, but it's not gonna work as well. Test it out on a little swatch area first.
Mhm.
Any other questions? I was looking, where did I see last night? I saw a picture of sea glass, and I thought that would be fun. Sea glass is super smooth. I don't know if it has the texture, but if you could imagine doing this with like sea glass blue greens, that would be really pretty too. There's lots of options. So create a rock painting of your own and please share it, whether you send it to me or get it up in the group, that Flickr page. That would be awesome. And I will see y'all next week.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
Elizabeth, may I ask you a
Yeah.
Bye,
question?
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
So remember that class that I took about the jelly painting from you? Okay, question. To transfer a photo, the paint that you put on has to be wet and then you put the picture on it? Like not a photo, but like from a magazine.
Magazine.
Paint on the plate still has to be wet, then you put the picture on it. And then do you wait for it to dry and then pull it?
No, I'm not sure, Michelle.
Okay. I've been trying and trying.
Jelly Arts. Look at the Jelly Arts website.
Okay.
Because
That's a
they have a good little tutorial or video on how to do that.
Okay. Okay.
Um,
Plus, I don't have really good paint, so
don't let it dry long. Nothing in jelly printing needs to dry very long.
unless you're doing a color on top of a color. You want the bottom.
Right, unless you're layering prints.
Okay.
But yeah, I haven't completely mastered that technique. So look at Jelly Arts website, or just look at
Okay.
Instagram and Google. What is it called? Image transfer.
Oh, great. Yes, right.